the forgotten path to the secret of Everest, buried in the snow. The wind screamed across the white emptiness of Everest, carrying with it the stories of all who had dared to climb and never returned. Snow drifted over broken ropes, half-buried tents, and the forgotten dreams of explorers who had vanished into its frozen silence. But deep beneath that endless frost, something ancient waited, a secret untouched for centuries, hidden in the mountain's heart. No one had spoken of it in decades, except in hushed tones around base campfires, where the flames cracked like fragile hope. They called it the Forgotten Path, a route erased from every map, buried under avalanches and time itself. No one knew where it led. Some said it was a myth, others said it was cursed. But for Elena Carter, the mountain's mystery was more than a story. It was her father's last message. 10 years ago, her father, a mountaineer and historian, had vanished during an expedition to uncover the lost route. He had left behind only a torn notebook, found in the snow near Camp 4. Inside it were sketches, notes, and one chilling line written in his familiar, steady handwriting. "The path is not on the mountain, it is within it." Those words haunted her for years. She had read them hundreds of times, wondering what he meant. And now, standing at base camp, surrounded by roaring wind and prayer flags flapping like wings, Elena finally decided to follow where his trail had ended. The mountain loomed above her like a sleeping god, vast and merciless. The air was thin, sharp enough to sting her lungs, but her heart burned with quiet determination. Around her, her small team of climbers made final preparations. There was Tenzin, the Sherpa, who had known the mountain since childhood and spoke to it like an old friend. Marcus, the geologist who believed the ancient rock held hidden chambers and lost civilizations. And Leah, a documentarian who had joined to film the journey, though Elena suspected she sought something deeper than a story. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Leah asked, lowering her camera as she looked at Elena. "Your father disappeared chasing this legend." Elena's gaze lifted toward the mountain's ghostly summit, glinting in the fading light. "That's exactly why I have to find it," she said softly. "He found something up there, and I'm going to finish what he started." Tenzin murmured a quiet prayer, pressing his palms together. "The mountain keeps its secrets," he said, "and it punishes those who try to take them." That night, as the wind howled against the tents and snow whispered outside, Elena couldn't sleep. She opened her father's notebook again, tracing the faded lines of his maps. Between the pages, a folded scrap of paper fell out, something she'd never noticed before. It was a hand-drawn map. A faint line curved across the base of the mountain, veering away from the known routes, leading to an area marked with a single word: the Hollow. Her breath caught. None of the official maps mentioned such a place. When morning came, she showed it to Tenzin. His face turned pale the moment he saw it. "No one goes there," he whispered. "That part of the mountain moves." "Moves?" Marcus laughed. "Mountains don't move." But Tenzin didn't laugh. "Then tell that to the men who went there and never came back." The team left base camp under a gray sky, the snow crunching beneath their boots. Each step carried them higher into the frozen world, where oxygen thinned and sound seemed to vanish. The climb was brutal, every breath like fire in their chests, every gust of wind a threat. But Elena kept moving, driven by something more powerful than fear. By the third day, they reached a narrow ridge that wasn't on any map. The landscape was eerie, silent, untouched, as if the mountain itself had forgotten this place. The snow was smoother here, and beneath it, Elena noticed strange, dark patterns, like markings or carvings frozen in the ice. Marcus knelt, brushing away snow with his gloved hand. "These aren't natural," he said quietly. "They look like symbols." Ancient lines, spirals, and what looked like eyes stared up at them from the frozen ground. Elena's heart pounded. Her father had once written about ancient Himalayan civilizations that predated any known history, tribes who worshipped the mountain as a living being, believing it guarded the gate of the skies. Could these carvings be their work? Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A distant rumble echoed through the cliffs. Tenzin shouted something, but his voice was swallowed by the wind. The snow around them began to shift, a slow, rolling wave of white. Avalanche. Run! Marcus screamed. But it was too late. The world exploded into motion, roaring, blinding, unstoppable. Elena was thrown off her feet, tumbling through ice and snow. She reached out blindly, clutching at anything, until her gloved hand found a jagged edge of rock. She hung there, gasping, as tons of snow thundered past her. When it finally stopped, the world was silent again, except for the hiss of falling powder. Elena opened her eyes. Her team was gone. The ridge above her had collapsed. The mountain had swallowed everything. And then she saw it, a dark opening in the rock face just ahead, half buried by the avalanche. A cave. Or an entrance. The same shape that her father had drawn on the map. Her voice trembled as she whispered into the still air, the hollow. She didn't know if her team had survived. She didn't know where she was. But something deep within her, a whisper of her father's voice, told her this was exactly where she needed to be. And as she stepped into the darkness of the cave, the sound of the wind faded behind her, replaced by a low, echoing hum, like the mountain itself was breathing. The forgotten path had found her. The air inside the cave was deathly still, yet alive with something ancient. Elena's breath formed clouds in the beam of her flashlight as she stepped carefully across the uneven ground. The walls glittered faintly, not with ice, but with crystals embedded in stone, shimmering like stars caught in darkness. She pressed a hand to the cold wall. It vibrated faintly, as though something deep inside was humming, a slow, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. "Elena to base camp," she said into her radio, but only static replied. She tried again. Nothing. The mountain had swallowed her signal. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, yet a strange energy urged her forward. She followed a narrow passage that curved downward, twisting like a serpent through the heart of the mountain. The air grew warmer as she descended, and the ice gave way to damp rock. When she finally reached a wider chamber, her light caught something on the wall, symbols, the same ones they'd found on the ridge. Only here, they were clearer, carved deep into the stone and glowing faintly blue. She moved closer, tracing one of the spirals with her glove. The glow brightened at her touch, spreading across the carvings like veins of light. "Oh my God," she whispered. In the glow, she noticed something else: bones. Dozens of them, scattered near the walls, half buried in dust. Not from animals, human. Ancient climbers? Monks? Explorers? She couldn't tell. But near the bones, she saw fragments of old climbing gear, rusted metal hooks, torn rope, frozen journals. Someone else had been here long ago, and they hadn't made it out. Elena knelt beside one of the skeletons, her flashlight sweeping across the stone beside it. There, scratched faintly into the rock, were the words in English. "We found the gate. It should have stayed buried." She froze. Whoever wrote that had been from a modern expedition, perhaps even her father's. Her heart began to race. She fumbled for her father's notebook, flipping through the pages. On the last one, she found something she hadn't noticed before: faint pencil markings beneath his handwriting, like an indentation from a message once written and torn away. When she rubbed it lightly with her thumb, the outline appeared. "The hollow hides the memory of the mountain. Don't open the gate." A chill ran down her spine. "Don't open the gate." She glanced around the glowing chamber. Somewhere, she could hear faint dripping, water echoing through the tunnels. The hum in the walls was growing stronger, resonating through her chest like distant thunder. "Elena!" She spun around, nearly dropping her light. For a moment, she thought she was hearing things. But then she saw movement in the tunnel, a shadow stumbling toward her. It was Marcus, his face pale, snow still clinging to his gear. "Thank God," she breathed. "You're alive." "Barely," he panted. "I thought the avalanche had me. Where are we?" "The hollow," she said, showing him the glowing carvings. "I think my father found this place." Marcus stepped closer, running his hand over the walls. These aren't just markings, they look like some kind of ancient code. Look, each symbol connects to the next one, almost like a map. Before she could respond, a faint voice echoed from deeper inside the cave. Elena! She froze. It was a whisper, quiet, broken, but unmistakable. Her father's voice. Marcus looked at her sharply. Did you hear that? She nodded slowly. It sounded like... Elena, the voice came again, fainter this time, like a memory carried through stone. Against every instinct, she followed it. The tunnel narrowed again, forcing them to crawl between jagged rocks and dripping stone. The humming grew louder. Then suddenly, the tunnel opened into another vast chamber, and they both stopped in awe. Before them stood a massive stone door, half covered in ice. It was engraved with countless symbols, spirals, and what looked like constellations. In the center of the door, a circular seal pulsed with the same blue light that ran through the cave walls. Marcus whispered, "This must be what they meant by the gate." Elena stepped closer, the light reflecting in her eyes. She reached out, brushing snow away from the carvings. Around the edges of the door, she noticed a familiar pattern, the same geometric shape drawn in her father's notebook. It was a map of Everest, but inverted, as if showing the inside of the mountain. "This is incredible," Marcus said. "If we can open this." "No," Elena interrupted sharply. "My father wrote that it should stay closed." "Come on, Elena. You know what this could mean? Hidden chambers, ancient civilizations. This could rewrite human history." She hesitated. He wasn't wrong. The world had spent centuries conquering Everest, but no one had ever looked beneath it. And yet, her father's warning burned in her mind. "Don't open the gate." Before she could decide, the mountain trembled again. Dust rained from above, and the light from the carvings flickered wildly. Marcus stepped back nervously. What was that? The door began to pulse, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. "Elena," the whisper came again, louder now, echoing all around them. "Elena, leave this place." Her flashlight flickered, then went out. The chamber plunged into darkness, lit only by the eerie blue glow from the door. "Elena, what's happening?" Marcus shouted. The seal in the center of the stone began to spin slowly, like an ancient lock turning after centuries of silence. Elena grabbed Marcus's arm. "Run." But before they could move, the door cracked open with a sound that shook the mountain itself, a deep, thunderous groan that echoed like the roar of something awakening. Blinding light burst from the crack, spilling across the chamber. The air turned hot, vibrating with unseen energy. Then came the whisper again, no longer her father's voice, but something older, deeper. "You have woken the memory of the mountain." Elena screamed as the light engulfed them, and everything went white. When Elena opened her eyes, the world was no longer cold. The biting wind and freezing air were gone, replaced by a deep warmth that shimmered like sunlight under the surface of water. She blinked slowly, her head throbbing. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, until she saw what lay before her. The chamber had transformed. The stone walls were gone, replaced by smooth crystal surfaces that glowed with a faint golden hue. Streams of light ran through the ground like liquid fire, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She pushed herself up. "Marcus." His voice echoed faintly. "I'm here." He was standing a few meters away, staring in awe at the glowing chamber. "What is this place?" It's like we're inside the mountain's core." Elena's flashlight flickered uselessly. They didn't need it anymore. The walls themselves radiated light. Above them, the ceiling shimmered like a frozen sky, patterns shifting across it like auroras. She took a slow breath, the air strangely light and fragrant, not at all like the thin oxygen of high altitude. "This can't be real," she whispered. Marcus crouched near one of the glowing channels of light, studying it. "This isn't magma. It's some kind of energy flow. The crystals are conducting it. Maybe geothermal, or," he trailed off, eyes wide, "or something we've never seen before." As they explored deeper, The tunnel opened into a vast, circular hall. At its center stood a towering structure of carved stone, part monument, part machine, surrounded by 6 massive pillars. Symbols covered every surface, glowing softly in the golden light. Elena stepped closer. The carvings looked like writing, not just decorative markings but words, language. She brushed snow and dust away, revealing intricate patterns. Each symbol seemed to shift when she looked at it, almost alive. Marcus was speechless. This is impossible. You're telling me there's an entire underground structure inside Everest? Elena nodded slowly. And it's been here long before anyone climbed the mountain. A thought crept into her mind, her father's research about lost Himalayan civilizations. He had once theorized that the earliest people believed Everest was the spine of the world, a living entity that connected Earth to the heavens. Maybe this was proof. She turned toward the monument in the center. Something about it felt familiar. The circular core glowed faintly blue, the same color as the carvings outside the gate. And on its base, she saw an emblem that made her blood run cold. It was her father's handwriting. A message carved into the stone itself. The mountain remembers. Do not wake what sleeps beneath. Her breath caught. He was here. Marcus stepped closer. Elena, if your father reached this place, then maybe. But before he could finish, the light in the chamber began to change, dimming from gold to deep blue. The air grew heavy, pressing against their chests. A low vibration filled the space, followed by a soft, echoing sound. Not a voice, but a song. It was faint at first, like wind through a flute, but soon it grew louder, forming strange harmonies that vibrated through their bones. The walls seemed to ripple with it, the symbols glowing brighter in rhythm. Elena, Marcus whispered. The walls, they're reacting to us. Then the center monument flared with light, casting their shadows across the walls. From its glowing surface, images began to emerge, not carvings, but memories. They saw men and women in strange, ancient clothing climbing the same mountain thousands of years ago, their faces calm, their eyes glowing faintly with light. They carried crystal rods and symbols that matched those on the walls. They reached this very chamber and began sealing something beneath it. Elena couldn't move. The images played out like a vision, the ancients chanting in unison, light pouring from the floor as the central monument pulsed brighter and brighter. And beneath it, a dark shadow writhed, massive, alive, trapped. What is that? Marcus whispered, stepping back. The vision shifted again, showing avalanches, storms, earthquakes. The ancients sealed the monument and fled the chamber, disappearing into snow and time. Then everything went dark. The blue light faded, and silence fell once more. Elena trembled, struggling to process what she had seen. They weren't worshipping the mountain, she said softly. They were imprisoning something inside it. Marcus swallowed hard. And we just opened the gate. The hum in the air grew deeper, louder. The mountain trembled again, not like an earthquake, but like something stirring far below. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the golden lines on the floor began to pulse faster. Elena, we have to go, Marcus said.
Now.
But Elena couldn't look away from the monument. She stepped closer, drawn to it by something she didn't understand. The circular core now pulsed in perfect rhythm with her heartbeat. She reached out, and as her fingers brushed its surface, she heard it, a voice, clear and ancient, speaking inside her mind. You carry his blood, the one who remembered. She stumbled back, gasping. What are you? We are the memory of the world. The mountain is our vessel. Your kind forgot, but we did not. Marcus was shouting something, but she barely heard him. The chamber's energy surged, light flashing like lightning through the crystals. He came before you. He knew the truth. But he tried to seal us again. My father, she whispered. He chose silence. You have chosen awakening. Suddenly, the monument cracked, a fine line splitting its surface. A blinding beam of light shot upward, hitting the ceiling. The entire chamber shook violently. Elena, we have to leave, Marcus shouted, grabbing her arm. The walls began to collapse, chunks of glowing stone raining down. They ran toward the nearest tunnel, the ground shuddering beneath their boots. The golden light turned red, and a deep roar echoed from far below, the sound of something breaking free. They barely made it into the tunnel before the chamber exploded behind them in a wave of heat and light. Elena was thrown forward, hitting the ground hard. When she looked back, she saw a glowing fissure spreading through the rock, as if the mountain itself was splitting open. The hum was now a voice, echoing through the tunnels, deep and resonant. The world will remember what it buried. Elena grabbed Marcus's hand, her heart pounding. We have to warn the others. Warn them about what? He gasped. She looked toward the glowing fissure, where the light pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the stone. The mountain isn't just alive, she whispered. It's waking up. The mountain was breathing. Elena could feel it, each tremor in the rock pulsing like the heartbeat of some ancient creature stirring after 1,000 years of sleep. The air inside the tunnels vibrated with a deep, rhythmic hum that made her chest ache. Cracks spidered across the walls, glowing red like molten veins under the stone. Marcus stumbled beside her, coughing as dust filled the air. We can't stay down here. The whole place is collapsing. Elena grabbed his arm, steadying him. We just need to get back to the surface. The passage we came through must still be open. They ran through the twisting tunnels, the light from their flashlights flickering wildly as rocks crashed down behind them. Every few seconds, the floor shook, forcing them to cling to the jagged walls to keep from falling. Elena! Marcus shouted over the roar. What was that thing in the chamber? What did you see? She hesitated as they ran, her mind spinning with what she'd witnessed. I think it's not a thing. It's a memory. Or a being, something ancient that was sealed inside the mountain. My father found it, and he tried to keep it buried. Then why did you open it? Marcus shouted, his voice breaking. Elena's chest tightened. Because I thought I was finding him. Not this. A section of the tunnel ahead of them suddenly collapsed, blocking their path. They barely stopped in time. Rocks and dust thundered down, sealing the route completely. Marcus cursed under his breath. We're trapped. Elena turned, her flashlight sweeping across the walls, and froze. The glowing symbols were changing again, shifting like moving water. This time, they didn't pulse blue or gold, but red, glowing like fire through cracks in ice. Elena, Marcus whispered, they're following us. The symbols spread along the walls as if alive, forming a path that curved down another tunnel. It's showing us the way, she said, almost to herself. Marcus stared at her. Are you seriously thinking of following that? It could lead straight to whatever's waking up down there. But she was already moving. We don't have a choice. The other way's blocked. They followed the glowing red path through the twisting tunnel. The further they went, the warmer it became. The air shimmered like heat rising from sand, and Elena could feel the hum through the soles of her boots. Finally, they reached a vast open space, another chamber, but this one felt different. It wasn't made of crystal and gold like before. The walls here were darker, smoother, carved with precision that looked almost mechanical. In the center stood a massive circular platform, half buried in rock, surrounded by what looked like ancient machinery. The red light flowed into the platform, illuminating its edge. Marcus approached cautiously. This looks like a mechanism, maybe a power source. It's still working after thousands of years. Elena stared at it, realization dawning slowly. No, this is the gate. The other one was just the seal. This is what they built to contain whatever's beneath the mountain. The air around them pulsed again. This time, it was no longer just sound. It was a voice inside their heads, resonating through the stone itself. Why do you run from what you awakened? Elena flinched, clutching her head. Marcus, did you? He nodded, pale. Yeah, I heard it too. The light in the room grew brighter. A figure began to take shape in the air above the platform, not solid, but a projection made of swirling light and shadow. It looked vaguely human, yet its form shifted constantly, like mist caught in fire. We are the memory of the mountain, it said. We slept so the world could begin anew. And now you have broken the silence. Elena took a step forward, her voice shaking. What are you? What is this place? The figure tilted its head, almost curiously. Long before your kind named this mountain, before your words or your wars, we were here, the watchers of the sky gate. We kept what the world was not ready to know. But time forgets. You remembered. Elena swallowed hard. My father, he came here, didn't he? The figure's form flickered, and for a heartbeat, she saw her father's face reflected in it, tired, determined, afraid. He sought truth. He learned the cost. He tried to restore the seal, but his body failed him. His memory became one with ours. Tears welled in her eyes. He's gone? Not gone. Remembered. Marcus stepped forward. You said you were keeping something contained. What is it? The air seemed to darken. The mountain was built upon the wound of the world. Beneath the ice sleeps the source of all storms, the first light that burned the sky. It must never rise again. Elena's voice trembled. And now we've weakened the seal. The seal is broken, the voice replied. The hollow breathes again. A sudden quake shook the chamber. Cracks split the platform, and blinding light surged upward from below, pure, white, and alive. The temperature plummeted, so fast their breath turned to frost in the air. Elena! Marcus shouted. We have to go, now. But she couldn't move. The light was hypnotic, calling to her. Inside it, she could see flashes, glimpses of something vast and beautiful, swirling galaxies, oceans of stars, cities of ice buried under the earth. A memory of the planet before time. Then she heard her father's voice, faint, but unmistakable. Elena, finish what I could not. Seal it before it wakes. She turned to Marcus. We have to close it. There has to be a way. How? He shouted. Elena pointed to the walls. The glowing red symbols were rearranging themselves, forming patterns that circled the platform. Those symbols, their controls. My father studied them. They must be part of the mechanism. Marcus ran to one side of the room, searching for any lever or panel. Tell me what to do. Elena scanned the walls, her fingers brushing the glowing patterns. When she pressed a symbol shaped like an eye, the red glow turned blue again. The shaking eased slightly. It's working, she yelled. Then hurry. They moved frantically around the chamber, pressing the glowing glyphs in sequence. Each time one changed color, the light from the fissure dimmed a little, as if the mountain itself was calming. But as they neared the final symbol, the figure of light reappeared, its voice now thunderous. You cannot unmake what has awakened. The light burst violently, sending them flying backward. Elena hit the ground hard, her head spinning. When she looked up, the projection had changed again, no longer a figure, but a towering shape of fire and shadow rising from the fissure, reaching toward the ceiling. Marcus shouted over the roar. Elena, what do we do? She crawled toward the final symbol, her body shaking. The air burned around her, the heat almost unbearable. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, pressing her hand against the glowing mark. A blinding flash erupted through the chamber. The light from the fissure turned white, then vanished entirely. The shaking stopped. The hum fell silent. For a long moment, there was nothing, just the echo of her breathing and the faint crackle of cooling stone. Elena, Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Is it over? She stared at the now dark platform, its glow fading into the shadows. The air was cold again. Still. I think we sealed it, she said softly. But as she turned to look back at him, she saw something that froze her blood. Behind Marcus, faint blue light was creeping back into the cracks in the wall, small at first, but growing brighter. The mountain wasn't done. At first, there was silence. The kind of silence that presses into your bones. Heavy, absolute, almost unreal. Elena could hear nothing but the thud of her own heartbeat and the faint ringing in her ears. The light from the fissure was gone. The once glowing chamber now lay in eerie darkness. Marcus leaned against a wall, his breathing ragged. We did it, he whispered, voice trembling. We stopped it. Elena wanted to believe that. But the stillness felt wrong. Too quiet, too heavy, as though the mountain itself was holding its breath. She stepped closer to the center of the platform. The stone was cracked and blackened where the light had erupted, but deep beneath it, she thought she saw a faint, pulsing glow. Her father's words echoed in her mind. The hollow hides the memory of the mountain. Don't open the gate. And now they had opened it. Elena, Marcus said softly, what if it's not over? Before she could answer, the ground gave a subtle tremor beneath their boots. It wasn't an earthquake. It was something slower, like a heartbeat returning after a long sleep. The blue light began to seep back into the cracks, crawling along the walls like veins of ice. The symbols flickered to life, rearranging themselves again, their glow faint but steady. Oh no, she whispered. It's healing. Marcus frowned. Healing? You mean? The seal, she said quickly. It's repairing itself, but not the way it should. The energy's reversing. It's feeding inward, not closing off. Marcus stepped beside her, watching the light pulse. So we didn't seal it, we woke it up more. A sharp crack split the air, and part of the ceiling collapsed, sending a shower of glowing dust into the chamber. A narrow beam of sunlight pierced through. Sunlight. Elena! Look. Marcus pointed upward. That's the surface. We can climb out. Relief flooded her for the first time in hours. She slung her pack over her shoulder and nodded. Let's move before the mountain changes its mind. They scrambled over the rubble, climbing toward the faint light. The air grew colder again, sharper. As they ascended, Elena glanced back one last time and froze. Something was moving in the chamber below. The cracked platform was trembling, and from the glowing fissure, a shape was forming, tall, shifting, made of mist and light. It had no face, but its outline was unmistakably human. Marcus followed her gaze. His face drained of color. We have to go. Now. They climbed faster, their hands numb, breath short, until at last they pulled themselves through the opening and collapsed into the snow above. Elena gasped, blinking against the blinding white sunlight. The familiar air of the high slopes filled her lungs, thin, bitter, and freezing. The storm that had buried them was gone. The sky above was an icy blue, calm and endless. They had made it out. But when Elena turned back toward the cave entrance, she felt her stomach twist. The once solid ice now shimmered like glass, cracks of faint blue light pulsing underneath. The mountain itself seemed alive. Marcus sank into the snow beside her. We have to warn the others, he said. Tenzin, Leah, if they made it. Elena nodded, staring at the distant ridges. Base camp's a day away. We'll make it before nightfall. They began their descent, careful but urgent, moving through the familiar route that was now strangely distorted. Some landmarks seemed wrong, cliffs that looked steeper than before, ridges that hadn't existed when they climbed up. It was as if the mountain had rearranged itself while they were gone. After hours of trudging through the snow, the horizon darkened. Shadows stretched across the glaciers, and the wind picked up, moaning through the peaks. Elena, Marcus said quietly, look. She turned and froze. There, carved into the ice beside them, were the same glowing symbols from the hollow. They stretched for meters along the wall, burning faintly through the frost. That's impossible, she whispered. Those symbols were buried thousands of meters below. Marcus ran his gloved hand across one. They're spreading. The mountain's bringing them up. Then came a sound that made their blood run cold, a distant rumble, deep and hollow. It wasn't thunder, and it wasn't an avalanche. It was something older, something alive. The snow around them began to shift, slowly at first, then faster. Waves of powder rolled down the slope as if stirred by a hidden force. Elena! Marcus shouted. Move! They ran. The slope ahead of them cracked open, releasing a blinding blue light from beneath the ice. The ground heaved, and the snow exploded upward in a white storm. They dove behind a ridge just as the slope above them collapsed, sending a roaring avalanche thundering down. The noise was deafening, a living roar that shook the air. When it finally stopped, they were half buried but alive. Elena clawed her way free, gasping for air. Marcus. I'm here. He emerged beside her, coughing. We need to keep going. They stumbled down the slope, but something was wrong with the air. Every breath felt heavier, as though the mountain was pressing down on them. The wind carried faint whispers, not the voice of the storm, but human voices, speaking in a language neither of them knew. Elena, Marcus whispered. Do you hear that? She nodded, eyes wide. The whispers grew louder, hundreds of voices overlapping, chanting softly. And then, out of the swirling snow ahead, figures began to appear. At first, she thought they were climbers, silhouettes moving through the storm. But as they drew closer, she saw their faces. They were pale, translucent, their eyes glowing faint blue. Men and women in ancient robes, their bodies half formed of mist and ice. The lost ones. The explorers, monks, and wanderers who had vanished on Everest through the ages, now walking again, their forms flickering like shadows. Marcus stumbled back. They're not real. But one of them turned toward Elena, its eyes locking on hers. Its lips moved, and a whisper echoed in her mind. The seal is failing. You must return. Elena's heart pounded. Return where? The ghostly figure raised a hand, pointing back up the slope, toward the glowing fissure high above where they'd emerged. The hollow remembers its promise. The gate must not open again. The light in the mountain flashed brighter, and the figures began to fade, dissolving into snow and mist. Elena stood frozen, her mind spinning. It's not over, she said quietly. We didn't stop it. We just woke the memory, and now the mountain is spreading it. Marcus shook his head. We can't go back in there. We'll die. She looked toward the glowing fissure, the blue light pulsing like a heartbeat in the distance. If we don't, she said, so will everyone else. The wind rose again, screaming across the slopes as the symbols in the ice flared brighter, crawling outward like veins of light. Elena pulled her hood tight, her father's notebook clutched in her hand. There's only one way left, she whispered. We have to finish what he started. She turned back toward the mountain, toward the hollow. As the snow began to fall harder, each flake glowing faintly blue. The mountain was awake, and it was waiting. The storm had turned the mountain into a living ghost. Wind howled through the crevices like whispers from another world. The sky was white, endless, and empty, a canvas of silence and frost. The glowing fissure, miles above, pulsed faintly through the blizzard like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the earth. Elena trudged through knee-deep snow, her goggles crusted with frost, every step heavier than the last. Marcus followed behind, his breath visible in short bursts. Neither spoke. Words felt small against the voice of the wind, and both knew what waited above. When they finally stopped to rest beneath a jagged ridge, Marcus broke the silence. Elena, we can't keep climbing like this. The wind's getting worse. We won't survive another night out here. Elena looked up the slope. The faint blue light shimmered like a beacon in the distance. We have to reach the hollow before dawn, she said. The symbols are spreading. Did you see them on the glacier? They're rising to the surface. If we don't close it, the mountain will. She didn't finish the sentence. The mountain would do what it always did, bury its secrets in death and snow. Marcus sighed, pulling his coat tighter. We need a plan. We can't just walk into that cave again. Whatever's inside, it's not meant for us. Elena reached into her pack and pulled out her father's weathered notebook. Its pages were frozen stiff, the ink faded in places, but the drawings and notes were still there, sketches of the same glowing symbols, fragments of text he'd translated years ago before he vanished. She flipped to a page marked with a torn piece of fabric. Here, she said, pointing to a circular diagram. He called it the breath of Komolungma. It's not just a gate. It's a containment field. He believed it held something ancient, something that once tried to rise from beneath the mountain. The monks sealed it using a resonance of sound and light, a kind of harmony that kept the hollow asleep. Marcus frowned. You think we can do that? We have to try. She looked at the fissure again. It's already waking. If it fully opens, the ice won't be able to hold what's underneath. They continued their climb. The air grew thinner, their breaths shallower, the sky dimming into an eerie twilight. At times, Elena thought she saw movement in the snow, shadowy figures pacing along the cliffs, flickers of blue light where no fire should be. Once, she turned to look behind them and froze. Far below, on the slope they had crossed hours earlier, she saw a trail of footprints leading up after them. But there were too many. Marcus, she said, her voice barely audible. We're being followed. He turned, squinting through the snow. By who? I don't know. The wind carried faint echoes, footsteps, soft and rhythmic, but wrong. It wasn't the shuffle of climbers. It was too precise, too even, like a heartbeat made of steps. They pressed on faster. The fissure grew closer, its blue light flickering like lightning trapped in ice. The ridge ahead led directly to the entrance of the hollow. The last time they had been here, it was buried under tons of snow. Now it was wide open, a mouth carved in the glacier, breathing out cold mist. Elena, Marcus whispered. Look. Shapes stood at the edge of the cave, not human, but not entirely formless. They were tall, wrapped in tattered cloaks of ice, their faces hidden in shadow. Each held a long, staff-like object that glowed faintly blue. She recognized the outlines from her father's sketches. The keepers, she whispered. The monks who vanished when they sealed the hollow. They're still here. Marcus took a step back. Still here? You mean alive? Not exactly. As they approached, the figures turned toward them. Their movements were slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. The light from their staves illuminated faces carved of frost, serene, hollow-eyed, neither alive nor dead. Elena stopped a few meters away and raised the notebook. We don't mean harm, she said softly. We came to restore the seal. The hollow is opening. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the wind. Then one of the keepers stepped forward. His voice was deep and echoing, like distant thunder beneath ice. The seal was broken by the hands of those who forgot their promise. The mountain remembers. The hollow remembers. Elena swallowed hard. Then help us fix it. Tell me how to close it. The keeper's eyes glowed brighter. The song of the hollow must be completed. The one who awakened it must give it back its voice. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? Elena opened the notebook again. Her father had written something beside the same phrase years ago. The song must be sung by blood that remembers. Her hand trembled. It means my father's bloodline. It means me. Before Marcus could respond, the fissure behind the keepers flared with light. The ground shuddered, and a deep, guttural rumble rolled through the air. The figures of the keepers raised their staves, chanting softly in an ancient tongue. The light responded, pulsing faster. Elena felt the vibration in her bones. She stepped forward, gripping the notebook tighter. Tell me what to do. Enter the hollow once more, the keeper intoned. Stand at the heart where your father fell. Speak the words he left unfinished. Only the one who bears his memory can bind the breath of the mountain again. Elena, no, Marcus said, grabbing her arm. If you go back in there, it'll kill you. She looked at him, frost clinging to her eyelashes, her face pale but determined. If I don't, it'll kill everyone. The fissure's light grew blinding, the wind howling around them like a storm of voices. Elena took one last breath of the frozen air and stepped toward the entrance. The keepers parted silently, letting her pass. Inside, the chamber was as vast as she remembered, but now the blue light filled every corner, alive, swirling in slow spirals above the broken platform. The walls pulsed like the veins of a living heart. Elena approached the center, her father's notebook open to the final page. Faded ink marked an unfinished line of text. She could almost hear his voice as she read it. To breathe as one with the mountain, to seal its memory in silence. Her throat tightened. Tears froze on her cheeks. She placed her gloved hand on the cracked stone and whispered the final words her father never had the chance to say. Let the memory rest. The light exploded. A deep hum filled the air, a low, resonant note that grew louder, vibrating through the ice and stone. The entire mountain seemed to echo with it. The fissure above blazed white, and the symbols along the walls blazed with pure energy, twisting and locking together like gears. Outside, Marcus shielded his eyes as the mountain's light flooded the sky. The keepers raised their staves, chanting faster, their voices joining the wind. Then, silence. The light dimmed. The glow in the fissure faded until only faint blue veins remained in the ice. The ground stilled. The storm fell quiet. Marcus stumbled toward the entrance. Elena! Inside, the hollow was dark again, empty and still. The symbols no longer glowed. The platform was whole. But Elena was gone. Only her father's notebook lay on the stone, its cover frozen shut, the final page glowing faintly before the light faded away. Marcus knelt, picking it up with shaking hands. A single line was carved into the platform where she had stood. The mountain remembers, but it also forgives. He stared at it for a long time, tears freezing on his cheeks. Then he looked up at the dark ceiling of the hollow, whispering, "Goodbye, Elena." Outside, dawn broke over Everest. The storm clouds had vanished. The snow was calm again, gleaming like silver under the sun. Marcus stood at the mouth of the cave, staring down at the world below. For the first time, the mountain looked peaceful, as if it had gone back to sleep. He tucked the notebook inside his jacket and began his descent, leaving behind the hollow, the keepers, and the mountain secret, now buried once again in the snow. But as he walked, far above him, the wind carried a faint whisper, a woman's voice, soft and distant. The path is forgotten but not lost. The descent from Everest was the longest journey Marcus had ever taken. Each step down felt heavier than the one before, not just from exhaustion, but from the unbearable silence that followed him. The storm had passed. The air was clear, thin, and sharp as glass. The mountain stood calm once more, bathed in sunlight, as if nothing had ever happened. But Marcus knew better. He had seen what slept beneath the ice. Days later, after battling frostbite and hunger, he finally reached base camp. The tents were half buried, the equipment frozen solid, and the flags torn by wind. For a moment, he feared everyone was gone. Then, a faint voice called out, "Marcus, over here." He turned. Leah stumbled out from behind a snow-swept shelter, wrapped in layers of torn fabric, her face pale and frostbitten but alive. She ran toward him, almost falling as she reached his arms. "Marcus, I thought you were dead." He held her tight, relief washing through him. "So did I. Where's Tenzin?" Her eyes fell. "He didn't make it. The storm took him when the fissure opened." I thought it took you too." Marcus said nothing. The image of the fissure, of the blue light and Elena's final words, burned behind his eyes. He reached into his coat and handed her the notebook, Elena's notebook now. Leah's hands trembled as she opened it. This was her father's. "She finished what he started," Marcus said quietly. "She sealed it, the hollow, the thing beneath the ice. It's over." Leah nodded slowly, though her eyes were haunted. "Then why does the air still feel wrong?" Marcus looked toward the peak. In the distance, Everest gleamed in perfect silence, pure and still, yet there was a strange shimmer along its side, like heat rippling off a desert road. He blinked, and it was gone. They stayed at base camp for 3 more days, waiting for a rescue team that never came. Supplies were low, but the weather finally cleared enough for a descent. On the 5th morning, they packed what little they had and began the slow journey back to civilization. As they trekked through the lower slopes, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Sometimes, when the wind blew across the ice, he heard faint whispers, like voices layered beneath the gusts. Not words, but sounds shaped like breath. He tried to ignore it. But when they reached Namche Bazaar, the first real settlement below the mountain, The world felt off. The locals were quiet, distant. The prayer wheels at the monastery spun on their own, creaking in the wind though no one was near them. At night, the sky above the Himalayas shimmered faintly with streaks of blue light, subtle, almost invisible, but unmistakable to Marcus. One evening, while they sat by the fire in a small tea house, Leah broke the silence. "Do you think it's really over?" Marcus stared into the flames. "I want to believe that, but you don't." He didn't answer. Later that night, unable to sleep, he opened Elena's notebook. Most of the pages were ruined by frost and water, but the final page, the one that had glowed in the hollow, was perfectly preserved. There was something new written beneath her father's last line. It hadn't been there before. "The mountain remembers, but its dream has no end." Marcus ran his fingers over the words. They were etched into the paper, as if burned by light. He sat back, his chest tightening. Outside, a soft humming drifted through the night, low and rhythmic, like the same sound that had filled the hollow when Elena sealed it. He stepped outside. The village was asleep. The moon hung pale over the peaks. But along the ridge above, something glowed faintly blue, the same color as the fissure. A thread of light running down the slope like a crack in reality. "Leah," he whispered. "Wake up." She came out moments later, her eyes wide when she saw the light. "Marcus, that's spreading." He nodded grimly. "The seal's not holding." They climbed toward the ridge, the snow crunching beneath their boots. As they approached, they saw that the light wasn't just a reflection. It was energy bleeding through the mountain, like veins pulsing under ice. When Marcus touched it, the light flickered, and a vision flashed in his mind. Elena, standing within the hollow, her form shimmering like frost. "The seal can't last without the mountain's breath," her voice whispered in his head. "Something beneath still moves." "Elena," he gasped aloud. Leah stepped closer. "What is it?" He swallowed hard. "She's alive, or part of her is. She's trying to warn us." Then the ground trembled beneath their feet, soft at first, then stronger. Rocks tumbled from the ridge, and a fissure opened along the snow, glowing blue from within. A column of light shot upward, splitting the night. The wind howled. From the fissure came a sound, not human, not mechanical, but something ancient. It was like the deep resonance of mountains grinding against each other, mixed with 1,000 voices whispering at once. Leah covered her ears, screaming over the noise. "Marcus, what is that?" He could barely hear himself think. "It's the breath. The thing the monks sealed. It's trying to rise again." They ran down the slope as the fissure widened, tearing through the glacier like lightning. The air burned with freezing blue mist. The prayer flags above the monastery burst into flame, glowing white before disintegrating into ash. By dawn, the light was gone. The fissure had sealed itself, but the silence that followed was worse than the noise. Marcus and Leah sat on a rock overlooking the valley, exhausted and terrified. The sun rose over the peaks, painting the snow gold, but the beauty felt hollow now. "We can't stay here," Leah whispered. "If this spreads..." Marcus nodded. "We go back. To Kathmandu. Someone needs to know." He closed the notebook and tucked it into his jacket once more. It felt heavier than before, as if the mountain had left part of itself inside it. As they began the long trek back down, the wind carried a faint whisper behind them. "The path is forgotten but not gone." Marcus turned back toward Everest one last time. The summit gleamed like silver under the morning sun, serene and beautiful, and for a brief second, he thought he saw a figure standing there, outlined against the light. Elena, watching. Then she was gone. He lowered his head and began to walk. The mountain loomed behind him, eternal and silent. But beneath that silence, something was still breathing. And far beneath the snow, in the darkness of the hollow, the symbols began to glow again one by one, like stars waking in a buried sky. The helicopter cut through thin Himalayan air, its blades slicing the silence that had blanketed the peaks. Marcus sat by the window, staring out at the white expanse below. Everest stretched endlessly, magnificent, cold, and deceptive. From this height, it looked peaceful, untouched by the horror buried beneath. Leah sat across from him, clutching the weathered notebook to her chest. Neither of them had spoken since leaving the base camp. Words felt useless against what they had witnessed, against the knowledge that something ancient still breathed under the snow. When they landed in Kathmandu, journalists, climbers, and researchers swarmed around them. Everyone wanted to know what had happened up there. Why the summit had glowed blue for a single night. Why the tremors had been felt as far as Tibet. Marcus said little. He simply handed the mountain authority a sealed envelope, a report detailing the team's scientific discovery, stripped of all truth. There was no mention of the hollow. No mention of Elena. No mention of what they had really seen. Later that night, as the chaos quieted, Leah and Marcus sat on the roof of their hotel, the city lights twinkling below like stars trapped on Earth. Leah broke the silence. "You're still hearing it, aren't you?" Marcus didn't look at her. He stared toward the distant outline of Everest, faintly visible even from here. Every night, it's like breathing. Slow, steady, like the mountains alive. Leah shivered. "Maybe it is." He turned toward her. Elena said the seal needed the mountain's breath to stay closed. What if the hollow wasn't meant to be sealed forever? What if the monks were guarding something that wasn't evil, just ancient? Leah frowned. "You think we were wrong to stop it?" He hesitated. "I don't know." The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of snow even here, miles below the peaks. Leah opened the notebook again, flipping through the fragile pages. Most of it was unreadable, but a few new lines had appeared since the last time they looked, as though written by invisible hands. "When the mountain breathes, the world remembers. The hollow is not a tomb. It is a cradle." She looked up. "A cradle?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Not to hold death, but to hold life." Suddenly, the lights in the city flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. Then, from far away, maybe hundreds of kilometers, they saw it. A faint blue glow rippled across the horizon. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't natural. It was the same color as the fisher's light. Marcus stood, heart pounding. "It's spreading. It's not just Everest anymore." Leah clutched the notebook tighter. "Then whatever was beneath the hollow, it's moving." 2 weeks later, the world had changed. Satellite images showed faint blue veins spreading through the Himalayas, like light trapped under stone. Seismic sensors registered low, rhythmic pulses, too regular to be tectonic. The locals called it the mountain's heartbeat. Governments sent expeditions. Scientists called it a geological anomaly. Spiritual leaders called it the return of the mountain spirits. But Marcus knew the truth. The seal was weakening. The hollow was opening again, not just in Everest, but in mountains across the world. One morning, Leah burst into his hotel room, breathless, holding the notebook open. "Marcus, look at this." New writing filled the page, this time in Elena's handwriting. "The hollow connects them all. Everest was the first, but the breath moves through the bones of the world. It's waking something older than Earth's own memory." Marcus's throat went dry. "Older than Earth?" Leah nodded. "She's saying whatever's beneath Everest isn't from here." They left Kathmandu the next day, following the trail of tremors north toward Tibet. The journey was quiet, haunted. Every night, Marcus dreamed of Elena, her voice echoing through the hollow. The path is forgotten, but not lost. When they reached the plateau where her father's old research station stood, they found it buried in half-melted snow. Inside, papers were scattered everywhere. Maps, translations, symbols identical to the ones on the walls of the hollow. Among the wreckage, Marcus found a metal box. Inside was a broken transmitter, decades old, and a note written by Elena's father. "The hollow is one of many. Each peak marks a gate. Together, they contain the memory of the first light, the energy that fell from the stars and gave the earth its breath. We did not build the seal. We only inherited it." Leah whispered. "He thought Everest wasn't just a mountain, it was built around something." Marcus nodded slowly. "An ancient structure. A vessel. As they read, a low hum began to rise beneath their feet. The station's metal walls vibrated softly. Outside, the snow trembled. Marcus ran to the window. The ground was glowing faintly blue, just like before. "Elena," he whispered. Her voice echoed faintly in his mind, as if answering, "You must see it for what it truly is." They ran outside as the snow split open. But instead of chaos, this time the light was calm, fluid, almost gentle. The air shimmered, and for the first time, Marcus didn't feel fear. Beneath the snow, a vast pattern revealed itself. Not random cracks, but deliberate designs, circles within circles, like a celestial map etched into the mountain skin. The same pattern from the hollow, but spanning miles. Leah stepped closer, her breath fogging the air. "Marcus, it's not opening to destroy. It's revealing." He nodded, his eyes wide. "The mountain's showing us its heart." From the center of the pattern, light began to rise, soft, golden this time, not blue. And within it, for a brief, impossible moment, Marcus saw figures, tall, luminous beings made of the same light, their forms graceful and ancient. They stood silently, watching. Then one of them lifted its hand, and the voice that filled the air was both alien and familiar, echoing like 1,000 mountains speaking as one. "You have awakened what was meant to dream. The earth remembers her beginning. Do not fear the light. It is her breath returning." Marcus fell to his knees, tears freezing on his face. "What are you?" "We are what she forgot," the voice said softly. "And what you will remember again." Then, as suddenly as it began, the light dimmed. The figures faded. The snow settled. The hum stopped. The mountain was still. Leah stood beside him, trembling. "Did that just happen?" He nodded slowly. "I think we just spoke to the memory of the earth." They stood in silence, staring at the mountains that stretched forever. Ancient, patient, alive. Finally, Marcus opened the notebook one last time. The pages were blank now. All the words gone. Only a single line remained on the last page, written in glowing letters that slowly faded as he read. "The secret of Everest is not in what it hides, but in what it remembers." He closed the notebook and looked at Leah. "Maybe we weren't supposed to seal it. Maybe we were supposed to listen." As the first snow of winter began to fall again, Marcus looked toward the distant summit of Everest. For the first time, it didn't look like a grave. It looked like a guardian, ancient, watching, alive. And somewhere, high above the clouds, he swore he saw her, Elena, standing at the edge of the world, smiling. The mountain exhaled softly, sending a wave of snow drifting across the valley, like a sigh of peace. The hollow was quiet. The light was gone. But its memory lived on.